So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm just going to put everybody on mute, but just be aware that you can put questions into the chat box if you want to say something immediately, and I can respond to it in real time, or we can save it for when I've finished going through the information, and we'll have a bit of time for discussion at the end. So as we've spoken about previously, we know that we want to refocus, sort of jumpstart our communications efforts as far as our chapter is concerned. And we know that, the communications team cannot do that alone for reasons that I will get into. So we're going to talk a little bit about our high level goals, connecting that to the essential purposes of the chapter, present some of the guidelines, some of what we've done. Kent and I ended up being the two people who sat together just through an accident of weather. It was the two of us that came up with the process. But really now what we're looking to do is really open up the process and broaden it to everybody else as well. So as I mentioned, we hope to have some conversation about what we've shared today, make sure everyone sort of understands what the big picture is, why we're all invested in this together as chapter chairs, as committee chairs, and chapter executive, and then figure out, even if it's just a preliminary next steps and who's going to do and by when. So we know our chapter. I believe I got this. I believe I quoted this right off the website. We've got quite a few members at large. Something like 800,000 members of the public, tons of organizations, companies, associations, and we want to make sure that we are communicating at some level with all of them. That's a very big task, and it's important that we are smart about that we have a system, and that we have some sort of strategy that we're looking back to. So I ripped this off our chapter website, the essential purposes of the chapter. There's a lot here to say, but basically we have public awareness, we have two-way communication with our members and council, we have compliance issues, and then we have participation, which is a really broad sort of category. The rest of the essential purposes around recognition, and then governance. So I sort of zoned in, and you can let me know if you agree with me or not, on three essential purposes that communications are, our communication strategy should maybe be looking at first of all, or tackling first. So first of all, public awareness, that's a pretty easy one, and two-way communication between the PEN, the PNGs, EITs, and, us as a chapter, we represent the PEO headquarters and council to a certain extent. And then encouraging license holders to take an interest in PEO. So two of these, as you'll see, the main sort of stakeholder that we're looking at dealing with are our own members. So that was sort of something that we came up with and something that we recognized when we did our strategy communications planning last year as well. So this is just from a communications perspective. Again, this is a snapshot. This is sort of what we see. I can really only claim to speak for myself and to a certain extent for the communications committee. But I would call this the start of a conversation, not a definitive where we're at. I think some of the things that we're doing really well as a chapter in terms of achieving our essential purposes are that we have great, regular, well-attended events. Those are really going well. We have good working relationships with the local universities. You see that the representation at our chapter meetings. Our website is now up and running thanks to, Suresh doing the bulk of the programming and Rory and Kent now carrying on and making sure that the website is updated frequently. And we do have a presence on social media through Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So those are some of the assets, some of the things I think are going well, that we're doing right. Some of our opportunities and challenges are that, again, that I'm aware of. I don't know if we really have a strategy for saying how are we achieving our purposes, how are we measuring them, and how are we tying that back to the events that we do. Some of the events I'm seeing sort of from a promotional perspective, they either don't appear on the website or there's no evidence of them having happened afterwards. So though we have these platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, social, LinkedIn, all the social media platforms, we're not getting the content that represents all the good stuff we're doing. So in other words, we're sort of halfway there in terms of doing the activities, and we want to take that step and fully connect and utilize the communications platforms that we have so that the word's getting out there. And just another note, one of the challenges we have some members with no email address or online access. So that's kind of an interesting subgroup within our membership that we need to think about as well. So this is, again, just a sort of a current state summary. Again, I would welcome your feedback if you think there's something here that's not accurate or incomplete. I would definitely like to integrate that as well. So to say, here's where we're at in terms of our strengths over here on the left-hand side, and here are some of the things we want to tackle a little bit and change as we move forward. So here's some of the progress to date, and if you've already read the attachments that I sent out in my email on May 24th, then you'll already know this, so I'll just do a brief overview. The communication strategy process that we've undertaken so far involved identifying the most important audiences for our chapter. Now, these are in relative order of ranked importance. Again, here's another opportunity for you to give feedback. Do you agree that this is the right order of priority? Have we got all the right stakeholders identified here? Top of the list, our members and our EITs. Next on the list, anyone who's calling themselves an engineer but is not licensed, engineering students, youth, which I guess would be anyone younger than post-secondary, so K-12 potentially, or members of the youth community, local government, businesses, educators, and that could mean either in the university or college system or K-12, or members of the general public. So pretty much everyone by the time you get down to the bottom of the list. But we think that these, so this is sort of a top priority. Our audiences are at the top, and it's really worth it to segment them out this way. Anyone who's got, any exposure to marketing or entrepreneurship knows about targeting your customer and understanding them first, understanding their needs, their perspective, what language is going to be appropriate for them, what ideas are going to be appealing to them. That's how you engage people, is by sort of segmenting out your audiences and sort of thinking about them more specifically. So that was the first step that we took as we did our communication strategy. Then we talked about this, and we went through actually for each of these audiences, we thought, what would we like them to know? If we were sitting in a room full of EITs, or if we were sitting in a room full of engineering students or members of the general public or business owners, what would we like them to know, first of all? What are the top things, messages about the engineering profession or about our chapter specifically that we would really like to get across to them? Bearing in mind how much previous knowledge they have, how much interest they have. I guess an example here would be if you're sitting in front of a group of kids, you're probably not going to start talking about the repeal of the industrial exception. Kids don't know what that means. They don't have relevance for that unless you're able to translate it and use language that makes it relevant and accessible for them. You might be able to say, well, we're working on talking to the government to make sure that people are safe in their workplaces. That might be a sort of an age-appropriate way or an audience-appropriate way of talking about if we decided repeal of the industrial exception was one of our key communications goals. That would be how we would do it. We would definitely bear in mind our audience as we package up each of these messages. So what do we want them to know? Next level was, what would we like them to do? So what specific action, if they get up and go out of this room, this hypothetical room where we're talking to them in, what's the next thing we'd like them to do? Do we want them to, go out and volunteer or go to a certain website, or do we want them to vote? I mean, I think that's a pretty easy one. In terms of our members, do we want to see them volunteering to get involved with our events or coming out to the golf tournament, anything like that? So what would we like them to know? What would we like them to do? How can we help? How can we support them? Provided they're a reasonably enthusiastic person and there's some probability that they might do this thing that we want them to do, what's the thing that we could do to nudge them over the edge into doing it? So an example would be if we want them to vote, maybe we have something on our website that will that gives them the link or gives them a reminder to go and get registered. If we want them to sign up for the golf tournament, we make sure all the information is right there on the front page, easy for them to sign up. And again, I think we're employing some sort of marketing or kind of entrepreneurial thinking here as far as getting a customer to do something that we would want them to do. In this case, we're not necessarily selling a product, but we are trying to get them to do a certain action or sort of understand a certain thing. And then the next step after that, these were sort of the 4 points we went through for each of these each of these audiences is, what do we need in order to give them that help to make that happen? So in a lot of cases, the answers were overlapping. A lot of the time it had to do with having the website updated. The website was the answer to quite a few things, as it turns out. There may be also, there may be other things around, once you get them to the golf tournament, we want to engage them in a conversation. Hey, did you know about the AGM that's coming up? Or did you know about the town hall meeting? We'd love to see you there, kind of thing. So having maybe a bit of a script, or a bit of some talking points, or maybe some pamphlets that we give out, or I don't know, business cards. There really is no one right answer on how to achieve these goals. But I think we wanted to go from the broadest sense of what's the knowledge, what's the action, and then what are the things that we as an executive board, as chapter chapter representatives and committee chairs would need in order to make that happen. And we know everybody's busy. We don't have time to be making 100 phone calls or doing a ton of follow-up. It's important that it's very doable for each one of us. So this is where the communication support comes in, and we want to talk about that as well. Here's a list of identified partners that we can reach out to, and you'll see some of them are in the community, some of them are fellow organizations. Maybe because I am myself a bit of a youth outreach enthusiast, we've got quite a few that pertain to the youth section. But again, we could certainly amplify this list to include other stakeholders that maybe pertain more to your committee if you're looking at this and feeling like there are some that are missing. So this is where I guess I'd formally ask who is missing, which goals or objectives are missing, which of your initiatives are missing. You probably need to refer back to the original attachment that I sent out, which is a more complete summary. It's got that full table of these questions on it for each audience segment. That's where we need your help. Again, as I mentioned, through an accident of weather, it was just Kent and I sitting together trying to figure that out. We're not the experts on your audiences. You are the ones who know what you're trying to accomplish as a committee, and we as a communications team are going to be able to support you better if we understand that and can then help you or guide you to create some of these tools and some of these systems that are going to allow you to create and measure those results on a regular basis. So I guess measurement brings me to my next question. I know, Richard, you've been doing the golf tournament for years, and that's come out really well. I'm guessing a pretty straightforward measure of success is how many people show up. But maybe there are other things that we could be measuring or sort of keeping an eye on in order to gauge the success of the event. For example, similarly for Jonathan with his athletics and the bridge building things, and some of the other activities that we're doing. Jane, with your EIT events, attendance is always an easy one. We can look at that as a quantitative measure. But then thinking back to what we're really trying to do as far as these messages, what is it that we want these people that come to these events to know? What do we want them to do? How can we help them? And what is it that we need to have in place? Is it a handout that we give them? Is it a contest that we run? I think this is where we need to sort of get creative. And I hope that makes sense to people. And, if you're feeling like this is all a little bit much to be throwing at you all at once, I think maybe where we need to go back to is just, do you agree that the list as we've got it so far, does it contain the audiences that we want to speak to? And then does it contain the things that you want to accomplish as a committee? I think it's very important that this strategy reflects input from all of the committee chairs, because you're the leaders and you're the ones who are sort of in charge of your own ship within the larger sort of chapter executive system. And then how are we going to measure that? So this is something that the communications team can help with. Not to say that the website and social media are the answers to everything, but they could really help. And so I think that we want to talk a little bit, and these are the follow-up conversations that need to happen. I would suggest, over the summer or over the next 6 months, what are some of the systems that communications can develop to support each committee? So some examples of a system, setting up an event on Eventbrite, that's something I know that is working really well already. Is there something else as well? Putting things out on social media has happened a little more sporadically because I think the expectations were not communicated to the chapter chairs, to the committee chairs rather. So that's what this meeting is about. I am actively asking, or I guess I'm asking on behalf of Rory because I'm going to be off a little bit over the summer. Is that we need that input. So as the communications team, we own or sort of administer these social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and the website. That's sort of the pipeline. You all are the oil. You've got the content. You've got the good stuff that will fill in, that we can help deliver. But an empty pipeline is an empty pipeline, and it doesn't really say or do anything without your input. So I hope you see this as an opportunity and as an offer of assistance. It's not us asking you to do one more thing, but rather it's us providing you with the tools and support that you'll need in order to achieve your goals. And we can sort of help and coach you to a certain extent for that. So then the second bullet point here is about a routine for committees to give information back to communications. So for example, Jane had her EIT night. And I'm just going to pop to the website here as an example of something that we did well. I think it's important to look at that. So this is our Facebook page. There we are, all our smiling faces on the pic here. And these are some of the things that we've been able to put, through the pipeline. This is a success story here. So Jane sent me this little blurb. It went up onto our page, and some people liked it and interacted with it. So that's great. Here's another example, something that I found because I happen to be on the mailing list for Engineers Canada. And remember we said recognition is one of our essential purposes. Well, Suresh went and won this Young Engineering Achievement Award. Good for him. So he gets a mention on our page as well. So there's really quite a lot that we can do. Oh, here's this is a panel discussion. Karu was there. He's not in the picture. I think he took the picture. But Amor was there, and Sailesh was there. So we had a great conversation with about 20 or 30 University of Waterloo students. There's a link to that as well, so you can watch the whole rebroadcast if you want to. So you can see how this just becomes a little bit of a scratch pad, a little bit of a diary, if you will, of everything that we're doing. People can look at it, they can interact with it. I've just been taking stuff that's on the website. I don't really know about anything else, and that's really all we can do. So I think we need to sort of formalize how the information cascades from the committee chairs to the website and then gets splashed out through social media. So here's Twitter. And for those of you who know social media know that Twitter is a little bit of a different animal than Facebook, but we're doing pretty well on Twitter as well. We've got 192 people following us. And again, this is me as the person who maintains what we're doing. I was at the EDU conference over the weekend, so I happened to mention, hey, maybe there's going to be an Ontario-wide mathletics tournament. So we're reaching out to other chapters, talking to them about what we could do. Here's some interesting things. Again, an Engineers Canada supplement that came out. PEO headquarters is now on Twitter and on Facebook, which is kind of amazing. So they were putting out some stuff about the recent, I'm sure you all heard about the guy who used to work for Hydro One, who is not an engineer, and how they were very quick to show that. We also have our LinkedIn page. And something that I think we need to just speak about briefly is the fact that so the last conversation is over a year ago. Again, we need to figure out what the plan is for this. How are we populating it? We've got some good connections here. We've got some people that are active, doing things out in the world. Kim Allen, Annette Bergeron, and several of you as well. But we haven't really activated this because we don't have a strategy. We don't have a system to put oil in the pipeline. It's an empty pipeline sitting here. So there's an opportunity for us to figure out what that looks like. Let's see. I wanted to say one more thing about as far as what we're trying to accomplish. Here's just a snapshot of the online footprint. This process it really does represent a dialogue with our stakeholders. That's one exciting thing about these new technologies is it's not like we're just sending a newsletter once a year or twice a year. This is actually a really cool opportunity for us to get ideas from people, for us to get feedback, for us to understand what they're thinking, whether it's our own members or business owners or members of the general public or other chapters. This is a really cool platform. This is a great opportunity. We don't have to make up all of our own content. Obviously, when we're doing things like announcing a deadline for a scholarship or something, then we do have to, create a little blurb, and that gets easier over time as we get into the habit of communicating these things. But we can leverage existing content to make our point. If we're trying to tell a story about how engineers are driving Canada's competitiveness, we can look in the Globe and Mail for articles about that. And, Google is a wonderful thing. We can find things to support our points. We can publish articles about that. And then, people are going to see that and they're going to reflect. We're starting a conversation. We're planting those ideas in line with the essential purposes of our chapter. And I guess my last point here was we need to coordinate. I think I wrote it down originally. We can coordinate or we can support each other, and I changed it to we need to, because I really wanted to make the point that we're only as good, as a communications team, we're only as good as the input that we're getting from you, and we also have the potential, I think, to really help you take your goals to the next level. So I hope that we can use this as an opportunity to start some good conversations and get some routines into place that are going to allow us to drive the results that our chapter is achieving in the right direction. So again, here are some of the online footprints. I would refer to these as the empty pipelines. The website's pretty good. I shouldn't knock the website, but the other, the social media stuff, we really do need to create those connections with you and start to get in the habit of putting stuff on there. And one quick thing before we jump into questions and discussion. We do have some guidelines based on some research that was done in the States. If you sat with me on any of the National Engineering Month calls, you've probably seen this before. These are the messages that have tested the best with youth and the general public about engineering. We might not think to use this type of language because we sort of take it for granted. It's like the water we swim in. We don't even notice it, the same way fish don't notice the water they're swimming in. But there's a lot that we can say about engineering that's really true and really effective. Around the fact that we need diversity. That's sort of how I would say this. There is a place for you, so it's especially important for youth to hear that engineering is a good profession. It's rewarding and it's interesting, and you would be welcome to join us, kind of thing. As opposed to some of maybe the stereotype is you have to have a 99% average, and there's no way you'd ever get in, so don't even try. Some of the sort of intimidating messages that some people might be receiving. We want to really distinguish ourselves from that, really shift that. The way that engineering shapes the future, and I know that a lot of us that are involved in any kind of innovation or change or sort of futuristic technologies are pretty excited about this one. The way that we can shape society and shape the way that our world works through the work that we do. How you have to be creative and you're turning ideas into reality, and that's really fun, and maybe again a little bit of an unexpected message for engineering, relating to taking care of people, relating to people's health, safety, and happiness. And I know I've heard Carew say this to groups of kids as well about his job with water management and how that's so important. That it's a people profession, that we're people, that we care, that we want to do the right thing. We're there protecting people, taking care of their interests, even if we're not that flashy. We don't have our own TV show or anything like doctors do, but it's an important profession and it really does make a difference. So raising that awareness, I think, is important. We also talked a little bit about, well, besides these ideas that come straight out of the research that the National Engineering Association did, what else could we talk about? Well, sustainability is obviously a hot topic. Energy, water quality, technology and morality, which is kind of interesting, robots and things. Ethics, obviously very, very relevant given some of the things that have gone on in the engineering scene, maybe especially in Quebec over the last several years. What's the relationship of science turning into engineering? I think science maybe has a higher profile overall than engineering does. So what's up with that, and how can we connect the dots to help people understand where engineering fits in as far as the design and sort of bridging from this ideas or sort of theoretical basis into the stuff that really affects the way people live. Innovation, especially in the context of entrepreneurship, I think that's really, really a popular local message for us as far as living in the Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph area. We've got lots of innovative people, lots of entrepreneurial people, lots of tech startups around. Awesome to tap into them and sort of see how that all relates together. Security, privacy, quality of life. Again, this is initial brainstorming from the session that we did last year. And I think our ideal state is for this concept cloud, if you will, to evolve. And maybe this is a conversation amongst ourselves that's like, I think these are the most important things, or here's an article and I think we should talk about this, or we should have this out there in the space. I think we want to stay away from promotional messages, political stance taking, and obviously reinforcing any existing stereotypes. So I'm gonna get rid of the prompt now, of the mute now, and I think I'll keep the recording on so that anyone who is listening to this after the fact will know what was said. My ideas for a conversation prompt, although obviously we'll talk about whatever you want. Which audiences is your committee most invested in? Which messages are most important? And then what does your committee need to do next in order to make use of the information that I've presented here today? The floor is yours. I'm going to be taking notes. I guess, Kent, is there anything, because you and I were the ones who sat together and put this together, is there anything that you would like to highlight or sort of underline for the group today? Matt, I'm just muting you because you've got some background noise there. Kent, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, you can stop blaming me for the material.
I prefer to think of it as being able to trace to the source, but there you go.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. No, I think you presented it well. We have a large, diverse audience, as you point out, and we need to prioritize that. We have lots of messages, and we need to think about which ones are most important to get out. And I think, as you point out, the committee chairs really need to be involved in this and identify that from their point of view.
Perfect. Well, let's hear from them.
Hey, it's Jane.
Hey, Jane.
I think for the EIT subcommittee, our audiences that we are most interested in or invested in would be EITs, obviously, and then students in university. In terms of messages, I know one thing that we're focusing on is sort of promoting or increasing EITs and students' awareness of what the benefits are of being a member of PEO. That's a big part of what we're doing, is sort of making people more aware of what PEO does and why they would want to register for the EIT program and ultimately as a PEng. One of the challenges we face is that it's possible for us to reach people who are already registered as EITs via the mailing list, or people who are registered in the student member program, again via the mailing list, but it's very difficult for us at this point to reach people who are not already sort of signed up to be an EIT. And I think some of the actions that we need to take are to make people more aware of what we're doing via social media, where we're not relying on a sort of generic e-blast that's going only to people whose email addresses we already have. Again, because we are trying to reach people who we haven't necessarily reached yet.
Right.
So I think that's, a big thing for us. And then also, I think being more effective in the communication we do have with EITs and students who are already registered, we didn't find that the response to the e-blast was overwhelming. So I think making sure we're hitting people from a variety of angles is going to be important. Certainly, I think email fatigue is a real thing, and finding ways of either through word of mouth or whether it's social media online, getting people talking about the events that we're doing and generally PEO and the licensure process, and getting people sort of connected back to us through other means.
Great. That's really helpful, Jane. Thank you.
It's Kent here. I think one of the things that we need to include in the mix that you didn't mention very much, Erica, is that email list to members, including EITs, and the whole use of email for communication. There are going to be increasing challenges around that with compliance with anti-spam legislation and stuff like that, and some of PEO's concern about use of mailing lists. But in some ways, email isn't the right way to reach the larger audience and get them engaged, because it is really only one way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether there's a conversation about how can we make our member mailing list two-way, because we fire out messages, we don't expect people to respond to them, and so we're not getting feedback through the email channel. Should we be looking at doing more of that, or should we be looking at using social media more to reach, to have that dialogue with members and non-members?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right, Kent. I think it's timely, actually, because we just found that out this past weekend, right, at the Western Regional Congress, that maybe using the email list it's going to get even tighter than before. So we're maybe just in time, right, to say, well, if we can't rely on email the way we always have, what other options do we have, and how can we leverage what we're doing? So I definitely have some ideas about that. I think that's good. I've recorded that in my notes here. And I'm going to maybe leave that as an open question for other committee chairs to speak up on. Who else have we got on the call here?
It's Rich here, Erica. One thing that tie in what Jane had said is, and back to your last point on your slide where I think people know you get your EIT, you come get your license, and you become a member at large. But I think if we tie all those together, then it's I think even, again, when Richard was our teacher at school, it was more of, you want to get your license for these reasons. You don't get it to get a certificate, but you become a member at large, and here are the steps, and you can't do one without the other. And again, because we're all communicating about the same principles.
Mm-hmm.
Just how do we do it a bit better? And then even from the other side, we have communication. If I send everything to Rory, but as the person organizing the event, it's hard. He responds in a timely manner, but I feel like I don't want to be bothering him by asking, hey, how many people have replied? Who's on this? So even the people that send out communications through Eventbrite or whatever, is there a way for us to have access to the data so I don't have to bother him all the time? Because if I use an example for the certificates, I write the email, send it to him, he sends it. Then a few weeks later, I ask him, hey, who's responded? Then I email those people, and I come back, ask him again. I don't want to waste his time either. So even the way we communicate between each other and how to get the information back, kind of similar to what Kent says. If we send an email to all the members at large, you can't respond to it and tell people either I don't want to be on the list, take me off the list, or whatnot, or how they feel, or get their feedback.
Okay, great. So I
don't know all the answers either.
Yeah, I heard two things there, Richard. That's good. I think one is you were sort of saying I think around in and around EITs around communicating the steps and for example to become an EIT and or a PEng. I think we want to make sure we're consistent in the information that we're giving. Was that what I heard you
Yeah,
say?
and tie it all together, I guess, tying it all together that you get your license, then you become a member at large, and you're part of this machine that we are.
Cool. Well, that occurs to me, and I'm not, this is just an idea off the top of my head. We could certainly approach it in a number of ways, but one way would be for us to have, a package or a pamphlet or a spot on our website where we can just tell people, like we don't need to each individually have our own interpretation or memorization of that information. We can just say, hey, go to this spot. And we're all, that's a great example of leveraging the communications as a tool.
I think that's a good idea. Some of the other chapters have had pamphlets they used in the past, and a year or so ago, Peter Chisholm and I were working on creating one for this chapter, but we never got it finished. So.
Okay. That's good to know. And then I think the other piece that Richard raised is really valuable feedback about putting the communications team sort of as the middleman between the committees and their audiences, and how that can create some lag and some, I guess, delay or reluctance to engage with people. So, Rory, I don't know.
I'm not. That's no diss to Rory, because he answers my emails in a timely manner. Just if I had access to see the data, I wouldn't have to bother them.
That's great. No, that's an excellent suggestion. I would always look at it as like, how can our system do better, right? So that we're not, we can take away the non-value added back and forth and make sure that we're getting to that information more quickly. So, Rory, I see you're on the call. I don't know if you have anything you want to maybe say at this point, or
no, not too much. I'm making a list. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I really appreciate you. I'm going to say setting up the call and everything. That's great of you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And I think that we're all on the same page here. We want to make a system that works well for everyone, something that's sustainable, that isn't weighing too heavily on one set of people or another, so that we're able to continue to achieve our goals in a way that works.
That's my phone. I have another meeting to go to here, so I'll talk to you all later.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate you stopping by. Okay, Matt, I'm going to try taking you off mute, see if you have anything to say.
No, I'm here. I'm working from home today. I have contractors upstairs banging in the kitchen. We're doing a renovation, so that was probably what you had.
No worries.
I don't have anything specific to add. I'm here for the ride just to try and keep myself current with what you guys are up to. I don't see myself officially as part of the task force or communications group spearheading this effort. I'm just trying to stay current.
Okay, great. And I think maybe the only chair we haven't heard from yet is Richard. Or sorry, no, that's Dave. RGZ is Dave, I think.
I think Dave had to leave at 1.
Oh, okay. Well, he's still showing on the call, but maybe he's not actually there.
RGZ would be Richard Zidner.
That's what I thought too, but it was Dave who spoke up when I spoke with that person.
Oh, okay.
Little technological trickery there.
Sorry, it's Jane. I have to go shortly in 1 minute. I'm just wondering what sort of next steps we're thinking for each of us, or for this sort of subcommittee at large.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I think probably there's some individual follow-up that needs to happen as far as the committees reflecting and coming back to us with their feedback on the strategy.
Okay.
And then, it sounds like we have a pretty good idea of what yours would be. I think, let me just see. These 3 questions really. What messages are most important, and then what specific actions do you need to take? Some of that is the committee chairs figuring that out for themselves, and some of that will be speaking with communications about how we can work with you. So I know we spoke about a task force. Here we go. Systems for communications to support each committee, and a routine for the committees to feed back the information to to communications. So it's really, again, it's that two-way dialogue between the communications committee and the various committees, their chairs, as far as what they're trying to do. So I think you're on track. But if there's anything additionally that you want to sort of get going, I think that's what we would need to talk about.
Okay.
I
So
don't
would
have
it,
a, yeah, I
would we
don't have a
send out
clear next
some
step.
sort of template to all of the committee leads with these 3 questions and sort of solicit some sort of formal response? I mean, I don't mind sort of quickly writing up what I talked about, and there's probably other things that I'll add once I talk to the rest of the subcommittee.
Okay.
Does that make sense as a next step? I don't know.
Yep, that's great.
Matt.
I'm being a little hands off just because I'm probably not going to be the one who's in charge of the next steps. But I think that maybe Rory, you and I can have a little chat and figure out how I can do this for you most effectively.
Yeah, I was thinking I'll step up and I'll make sure that I start. I'm going to say collecting all the data from each of the chairs, and I'm going to say even just sending out a follow-up email tonight, sort of just while we're at the meeting. But anyways, sort of start gathering that information, and so I can be the person who can start asking people to answer those questions.
Okay. That sounds great to me. I have to sign out.
Great.
But Erica, thanks for sharing, and we'll go from here, I guess.
All right. We'll see.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks,
Bye.
Jane. Bye-bye. And just a note here, Richard did sign. He did say his audio is not being picked up. I can see the benefit of the new technology, he says, but I'm currently still stuck on email. That's what I use with the students. So I guess we would need to follow up with him more specifically. So that's the end of what I had to say, and we're at 1:15. So if anyone needs to get going, that's fine. If you have any other questions or anything you want to chat to me about, then please stick around. I've got a few more minutes we can use to talk about what we've shared here today.
Okay, I've got to get going, but I'll see you guys tonight.
Okay, thanks, Rory.
Yeah, bye.
I'm going to have to sign off also. It's Matt.
So everything's good? You're happy?
Oh, yeah, no, this is more, as I had said at the last meeting, the main thing that I want to see handled is, I don't know if we're getting more or I'm just seeing them because I'm chair now, but I had another one about can you distribute this? And
right.
I can't, and we can't. But I can just see this as our email restrictions become heavier and our presence online strengthens. It's going to be it's coming at crossroads, right? We're going to get more inquiries to do things that we really can't. Or maybe we can, but we need to be able to say, this is the list of yes and this is the list of no.
Right. Well, I mean, for example, us retweeting something on Twitter or sharing something like this, that's not something we have to worry about as far as it being, a formal endorsement or infringing on anyone's privacy, because it's Twitter. I mean, the whole idea is you put things out there to share. So maybe that becomes sort of the relief valve, right? If we can't do it by email, we can share it through social media, and then we're still doing something for these groups that we want to support.
Yeah, and that's what I've said to the last 2 people I've spoken to, is trying to comply with CASL. And every time I turn around, we seem to be getting a more stringent definition of what we can and can't do from head office. Yeah. I don't think email is going to be the way that we share this type of information. I think it's just our default is going to be social media. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, but it's probably a more effective way to get the message out anyway.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is that our audience in general is breaking into 3 groups. Those people that don't even have email, we can only communicate by paper.
Yeah.
Those people that are still focused somewhat like Richard Zittner, his email is his way of communicating, and he doesn't look at social media much. And then there's the third group that are really social media users. So we have to think about our messages and what's the appropriate channel. You know, certainly if we're communicating something about PEO business, governance and that, likely our broadest reach is through email. But maybe we just realize that sort of the general conversation about engineering and our voice to the public community as well as some of our members is through social media. So we have to think about those channels as each having limitations, and see which what communication issues that fit best with those channels.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds like something we can put in a table or put into a system and make it part of our routine going forward. It doesn't, you know, I think right now maybe we're a little bit unclear. We're maybe struggling a little bit about where to put everything, and it feels a bit overwhelming. But I think once we make these decisions and we have a plan and we start getting into a routine of reaching out to the committee chairs in the same way, say every month or every quarter, it's going to get easier. It's going to be more routine, and we can invest in things like you know, a tool that can pre-populate a whole bunch of different content to share out on social media regularly. So we only have to look at it once a month or even once a quarter. There are things like that. Looking at advertising to grow our audiences on these social media platforms. I would say we don't want to do anything just without thought before it. I mean, I think we want to look at like how are we measuring success? What's the level of success we want to achieve, and then what's our goal, and then set that up and say if we get X number of people or if we get X number of responses, then we know it's working. We always want to be sort of experimental about this.
Yeah, and I think we have to do those measurements in compartments. So your suggestion of a table might be very good. Yeah. Because we have these different communication channels, and then we have different issues and categorizations of communications. Okay. Like some of our communications is just for our members. Some of it, you know, when we advertise an event, a lot of times we're only advertising it to our members.
Yep.
So we can't put it on social media because that's advertising it to the public.
Right. Well, we can. We just have to tag it appropriately. But you're right. I think this is something that we can. These are details we can dive into. I think as far as my goals for today's meeting was sort of to help people understand that, you know, it's not that we're sitting here slacking and twiddling our thumbs. It's that we need to create a more effective way for the committee and the committees and the communications team to sort of work together in a way that's not going to break our heads every single month, right? We want to have a system, have some steps, get it down to a science where we're doing this supporting of them and they're supporting us in a sort of a time efficient manner.
Yeah, I just come back to that table that you sort of generated some ideas for me. It is that sort of compartmentalizes the functions, and then I think we can look at within those blocks what's the best tool and how can we best deliver it to the group. And we may have to say, you know, some blocks we can't do very well at this point.
Yep, I think that's fine. You know, we capture that and we keep trying to improve it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I appreciate your time very much. Thanks for jumping on this call. It sounds like maybe the next step is just to touch base with Rory and make sure that he's okay to sort of take this forward and reach out to each chair, and we'll set him up to have some productive conversations there.
Yeah, and I'm quite interested in helping Rory with stuff too. So
Okay, great. Well, I'll make sure that that John and Gabe, I know they're two of the committee chairs that weren't able to make this call. I'll make sure they see this the link to this presentation, so that they'll be hearing this entire conversation, so it'll be like they're here, so they can be up to speed as well fully. I think that's important.
great.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,